Hey, I am back to review my next. Sorry, I am gonna adjust this a little bit. Hold on. Sorry. All right, I'm back to review my next 90s anime. So this is gonna be a regular thing I do. So we are doing Akira today. So mandatory Tetsuo Kaneda. Okay. So Neo Tokyo is about to explode, so we are going to get into it. So for all of these lives, I'm 43. So these are all like anime. Memories is another one I'm going to be getting to. So I have a lot that I'm going to do. But these are all anime that I watched dozens and dozens and dozens of times when they came out in the 90s, when I was in high school, when I got into anime. So I have a lot of notes for these lives for that very reason. Some of these, while I have seen them like 40, 50 plus times, I haven't necessarily rewatched them for like years, right? Because of how long ago they came out. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. So Akira is definitely cyberpunk. It's definitely dystopian. There's elements of body horror, to put it mildly. If you look at the end with what happens to Tetsuo in Neo Tokyo Olympic Stadium, like that's one of the most body horror things I've ever seen in my life. Sorry, hold on guys. So I just want to back up a little bit though, because a lot of you are not as old as I am. Like I'm 43. So some of you just might even be saying, hey, what's Akira? He's Katsuhiro Otomo. Or you might say, okay, I've heard of Akira. Like, what's the big deal? Like, why do people say it's a masterpiece? Why all this time later? Because it actually was released in 1988. We are almost at 40 years, right? Because it's 2025. Why are people still going on and on about it? Was it really that revolutionary? Yes. So I'm going to say why. But first, let's talk about like the background of the anime. We'll get into the impact. Then we're just going to discuss all the stuff that happens in it. So it came out in Japan, 1988. So here's the thing. It's not based on the manga. I want to like correct that because I see that a lot and it's wrong. So I haven't read the manga. I want to be clear about that. It's long as heck. It was serialized from 1982, I think, to 1991. So it was then collected into 6 volumes that are thousands of pages long, okay? What happened was Katsuhiro Otomo, the mangaka obviously behind Akira and the director of Akira, the movie, had started the manga. And then he did the movie. And then when he did the movie, he was inspired to finish the manga, right? So it is incorrect then to say the anime is based on the manga. No, it's not. The manga was nowhere near done. I just told you it was serialized for 9 years, right? So let's get that out of the way now. If a manga is thousands of pages long, a movie that is only 2 hours long is not going to be comparable, right? So there's no need for people to sit there and say, I don't like that Kaori. So she's like Tetsuo's girlfriend, was reduced to a punching bag in the anime. It's like, it's thousands of pages. It's 2 hours. And even at the time that Katsuhiro Otomo did the anime, he had been serializing the manga. What did I just say? 1982 to 1988 for 6 years. So we got that out of the way. I wanted to be clear about that. But this was the first manga, so Akira, to ever be translated and then published and released in America. So yes, it is that much of a landmark anime and manga, right? Some people, as time has gone by, has questioned that. They've pushed back on it. They've tried to say, okay, should that maybe not go to Katsuhiro Otomo and go to someone else? Hell no. You know what I mean? Who are you going to give it to? Because if you're going to just sit there and say, oh, Hayao Miyazaki, I want to correct you because we're talking about landmark, visionary, historical impact, right? Singular. That's what Akira and Katsuhiro Otomo is. So at the time when Akira was made when it was released in 1988, it had a $10 million US dollar budget. Not Japanese yen, US dollar. Please look up the currency exchange rate even back in the 80s. That was historical, had never been done before. It took over 10 years for Hayao Miyazaki to surpass that with Princess Mononoke. because 1988 Akira to 1999 with Miyazaki and Princess Mononoke. So Katsuhiro Otomo was that ahead of his time, okay? So it's the most important anime that was ever made, okay? If you've never seen even like scenes of Akira on like YouTube or something, I want you to understand. So like if you're younger than me, a lot of people on TikTok are not 43 like I am, right? So you're watching the anime that's out today. That's fine. There's no issue with that. I just want you to know though, it is computer generated. And I know you already know that, right? And a lot of it is 3D. And it can kind of give an impersonal feel sometimes because it's not hand drawn. So this was back in the era, of course, the late 80s when Akira came out. This was the cell animation era, okay? It was not computer animated back then. That technology was not around yet. Okay, but it's 160,000 hand-painted cells that went into Akira. So if you want to know, like if you just pull up Akira, you know, after you get out of the slide, whatever y'all are doing today, and you go, damn, why do the cityscapes look like that? Why are they so detailed, right? Why do the buildings look so real? Like, why is this so different from the anime of today? And I don't care what anime you want to talk about. I don't care if you want to talk about Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia. What it's about is that it's computer drawn today, and it's a lot of 3D stuff. But when you look at Akira, it was gritty. There was a realism and a griminess to what was being presented. Cyberpunk dystopia, this future, right? That was not that far off because it was set in 2019, but it came out in 1988, right? It wasn't set in like 2099, right? It wasn't like Cyberpunk, y'all play video games. I don't play video games, but I know it's Cyberpunk 2077. No, this ship is only like 30 years in the future. But it looks grimy, it looks gritty, it looks realistic, it looks lived in because of the attention to detail. And it's not the same when you have a computer drawing it. Just because you have technology doesn't mean that you have the same level of detail. So 160,000 hand-painted cells. That's what is in the hour and 48-minute movie, Akira. And there's 327 different colors. I want you to just like think about that for a second. I do. I want you to think about a box of Crayola crayons, and I want you to think about 8 basic colors, 16. I want you to keep going. But will you get to 327 because Katsuhiro Otomo did? When you combine that, when you combine 160,000 hand-painted cells, yes, I am going to say it again because it's one of the biggest questions that I get from younger anime fans is, oh, I wonder why anime from back in the day. Why did it look so different? Like Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who did Wicked City, Demon City Shinjuku, which I'm going to talk about. He did Ninja Scroll, which I'm going to talk about. How come it looks so different today? When you go back and you look, whatever you want to, like Akira, like there's too many examples, like, you know, Perfect Blue. It's like, where is that today? Bubblegum Crisis, so on and so forth, right? MD Geist, right? It's a very, very, very long list. And it's like, where is that today? And it's like, it's nowhere, right? Because it's like, an impersonal feel because it's computer drawn. So I just wanted to talk about that background before we got into anything else. Why is it so important? You know, why was this such a landmark? That's why, right? So now we're going to get into why it's considered a masterpiece, right? That's just explaining the background of how significant Akira was. I'm telling you because today, if you all are like 25 or under, I think TikTok's like a fairly, like that's around the age, but I'm 43. Back when this came out in 1988, people thought cartoons were for kids. You can go right now, you can type in like the New York Times review for Akira and you can see them warning parents and saying, this is absolutely not for children. It's not. It's bloody, it's violent, it's gory, right? There's the scene with Kaori towards the end. I want to be careful that I don't get flagged on here. But people just didn't even know, right? Again, this was the first manga, I'm sorry, but it was the first manga that was ever translated and brought to the West. So how would people know, right? They didn't even know what it was. And it's like, to Americans in the late 80s, it's like, well, cartoons is for kids, right? So let's get into the plot. That was the background of Akira. That was its importance and why it is still so relevant today. Why it has earned its place in history as a landmark anime. But now we're going to get into what it's about. So, as I just said, the anime was released in 1988. It was set, though, in 2019 in Neo Tokyo, okay? So it's taking place 31 years after World War III, okay? So what happens is there's this massive explosion in Tokyo. We're going to get into a lot of detail. If you stick around, a lot of detail. So Tokyo explodes. There's this massive explosion. It's completely destroyed. That explosion triggers World War III, okay? And then Tokyo is rebuilt from the ashes to Neo-Tokyo. And that is the setting of the anime. So it's 2019, okay? So what does Neo-Tokyo look like, right? There is a lot of the stuff that we see in America right now. There's corruption, there's rampant police brutality, crackdown on protesters. Like, you're seeing what's happening with people that are speaking up for Palestine. There is excessive militarism, nationalism, there's terrorism, there's gang violence, so on and so forth. There's a lot of parallels, even though this anime came out almost 40 years ago, right? 1988 to 2015, right? So let's get into the main characters though, right? So you've probably like seen or heard of like Tetsuo, Kaneda, and there's like a million O's and A's. They're the main characters, right? Kaneda, if you've ever seen anything for Akira, you've probably seen a guy on a red bike. It's one of the most iconic images in any anime. If any of you guys saw Ready Player One, there's like a callback to Akira in there. So it's Kaneda on his bike, right? That's like the movie poster. So he's the main character. He's a part of a biker gang called the Pills. He grew up in an orphanage in Neo-Tokyo, and his best friend, lifelong best friend, basically like a younger brother to him, is Tetsuo. He bullies him a lot, right? But it's kind of that typical like older brother, younger brother dynamic where Tetsuo really wants to be Kaneda, and Kaneda is like cocky and confident, and he's the leader of the bike gang, while Tetsuo is just another member, right? So they have a pretty complex dynamic that we're going to get into more. So basically, Tetsuo is very, 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 very central to the plot, but Kaneda is like the protagonist, okay? So we'll delve more into this. So there's another bike gang that is a rival of the Pills. So, right, that's Kaneda's bike gang that Tetsuo is a member of, called the Clowns. So they are fighting each other on the streets and everything else. And while that is happening, Kaneda and Tetsuo have a run-in with an ESPer. So what that is it's subjects that are being experimented on by the government and the military of Japan, of Neo-Tokyo, right? So they look like children, like they're very, very small, but they're obviously adults. Like if you look them up, they have like wrinkled skin. So there's a lot going on. So Kaneda and Tetsuo, while they're fighting the rival gang, run into one of these experimental subjects called Takashi. And as a result, right, Tetsuo gets captured. So the military basically sends people out to recapture Takashi, and they see Tetsuo, and they take him with them back to their labs. It's literally labs where they are experimenting on people with drugs, psychoactive drugs, illicit drugs, like anything like you can think of like that. So we're going to talk more about who and what Akira is. So this is not the first time that the government unfortunately has done this with disastrous results. Nothing was learned. That's real life, right? Because how many times have there been wars fought? How many times have there been genocides? And humanity does not learn a lesson, and it just keeps repeating the violence, the ethnic cleansings, right? There's obviously a lot of parallels between Akira and World War II. If it's 1988, which is when this was released, you're only like one generation removed from World War II, right? World War II was fought from 1939 to 1946. There are many people that were alive when this anime came out in Japan who lived through World War II, who might have fought in World War II, and who absolutely lived through the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, you know, obviously the United States horrifically dropped the atomic bombs on both of those Japanese cities, killing hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians. So all of that is a ideological, like a, you know, background of Akira, right? There's commentary that obviously Katsuhiro Toma is making about that. But I want to get back to the government experiments, right? So the government and the military keep experimenting on Tetsuo. They have him now in the lab. And basically my understanding of that is when he ran into Takashi, there was some kind of reaction that the government noticed, and they felt that, sorry, I'm getting used to TikTok. I'm still new to this, but they felt that, okay, he's somebody that might have psychic powers as well, right? So in doing these experiments, they unlock this massive psychic power that Tetsuo has, okay? So we're going to talk about Akira now. They've already gone through this because who is Akira? What is Akira? Akira was a young boy, okay, that in 1998, in the world of the anime, remember it's set in 2019, it was set in the future when it came out, but in 1988, Akira was a young boy that the government and military experimented on. His psychic powers grew way beyond his control. We're going to talk about this more. It's more deep. It's deeper than that. But he destroyed Tokyo. And then that explosion, that destruction triggered World War III. So they've learned nothing because they're still experimenting on that group that I told you with the ESPers. And then they see that Tetsuo seems different. He seems much more powerful. And they are now just endlessly experimenting on Tetsuo. So Tetsuo starts to get, like, and I haven't seen this in a very long time, so I want to be real with you guys, but I know he starts getting, like, these glimpses and starts hearing these messages and wants to know who is Akira. So he feels a connection to Akira, even though it's implied that Akira died in the explosion, right? That's the implication. It's not like the people that are experimenting on Tetsuo are, like, you know, taking him out for lunch every day or something, but it's heavily implied that Akira did not survive the explosion that he caused, okay? So, nothing was learned. And that's a big topic that's addressed in a lot of the 90s anime. So, if you didn't see my first 2 lives, I have some videos on my TikTok, so check that out. Follow me if you want to see these lives when I do them. But I've already done so far Ghost in the Shell and Perfect Blue, which I can't show you because I lent them to a friend because she's interested in them now, right? That's why I'm doing these lives. But technofuturism, Ghost in the Shell, right? Masumune Shiro. So Ghost in the Shell, there's been a couple of different iterations, right? Standalone Complex, there was a movie, there was a TV show. I got the manga, but the collection, it was the first edition that Dark Horse published back in 1988. So I didn't even know this. It's worth like $75 now, but I bought it back when I was 16 in high school, right? But technofuturism, right? What is that? It is the pursuit of technology and science beyond all reason. And it's never stopping to ask the question, should we do this? It's just, can we do this? And then if the answer is yes, you do it. Whether it's AI, whether it's robotics, whether it's cyborgs, whatever it is, right? Whether it's what Elon Musk has done with the Neuralinks and the implants, I can go on and on and on. Elon Musk, again, having live-in androids that he advertised as doing the things that people don't want to do, like picking your kids up and spending time with your friends. So that should kind of maybe wake you up a little bit. It's like, why wouldn't you want to do those things, right? When I think about things I don't want to do, I think about chores or maybe cleaning or errands, right? So maybe if it was advertised as replacing like Instacart or like a personal assistant, he was talking more about relationships that are personal, your kids, if you're a parent, your friends. So obviously there's a very dark side to all of this technology, and 90s anime were prescient because they could predict that. I also did a live on Perfect Blue. That was my live last week. He was so prescient. Rest in peace, Satoshi Kon. Perfect Blue is my favorite anime of all time. I have seen over 1,000 anime. So most of my anime collection is gone, unfortunately. So I don't have the actual DVDs and VHSs. Obviously, I remember watching them again and again. So I'm going to do a lot of lives. But he was prescient because he could see. In 1988, we're talking like AOL 3.0. Satoshi Kon could see where the internet was going to go. This is way before. There is no social media. There isn't even YouTube. YouTube was created in 2005. So 1998, I think Perfect Blue was 98. Was it 97? I was in high school. There was AOL message boards. There was GeoCities. website builder, there was Angelfire, there was Netscape Navigator, there was no MySpace even, right? There was no Friendster even. These initial, social media networking sites came later, came like in the early 2000s, not in the 90s, but he just saw, okay, this is going to create a parasocial dynamic, the internet, between celebrities and fans that is so hyper toxic and is beyond anything that we have today, because there's going to be this false intimacy that gets created if people have this constant access to celebrities. And he saw how dark it could go and that it could lead to, personas splitting off and psyche splitting with the celebrity and with the fans. So to get back to Akira, technofuturism, these human experiments, how did they not learn from the experiments on Akira causing this blast? This is what starts the movie. The movie starts with the blast in 1988 that happens, right? Destroys all of Tokyo. Then we jump 31 years to 2019. They didn't learn anything, right? They rebuilt Tokyo, Neo-Tokyo. Then it's like, okay, we got to keep the experiments going. It's that human hubris of next time will be the right time. Next time we'll get it right. Next time we'll figure it out. So, and of course, I mean, the bombs, the atomic bombs being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, obviously look at what happened after that. It's not like all the world powers said, okay, we learned our lesson. Hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese civilians were killed. They were affected by radiation, burns. Look up the aftermath. Poisoning, water supply. I can't even tell you how destructive that was for generations, right? Not just the people that were in Hiroshima and Nagasaki when the bombs dropped. So did the world powers sit there and go, okay, we're never going to do this again. Let's all sign a treaty or something for nuclear disarmament, right? World War II is over with, right? The Allied powers, that garbage, and they're not doing anything about Palestine right now. That absolute fucking garbage. But we won, so let's make an agreement that we are going to disarm ourselves when it comes to nuclear weapons. Hell no, right? There was just like an arms race, right, between the U.S. and Russia. And now you have Iran, obviously decades has gone by since then. And you have China, and you have all these strong men like Trump and like Putin and like President Xi in China. The list goes on and on and on. Definitely Satan Yahoo in Israel, and like their finger is right above the button, right? So nothing was learned. And that is what Akira was talking about, right? That technofuturism, that constant push for more technology at the cost of our own humanity. But no matter how much we suffer as a result, nuclear bombs were a technology that were developed obviously by humans. Look at Oppenheimer. They celebrated it in Oppenheimer. Think about how fucking fucked that is. Like, they made that guy a fucking hero and made him some kind of like figure to be like revered. Okay, so that's what Akira was talking about. So coming back to specifically the experiments that they're doing with Tetsuo, there's a lot of dialogue between the colonel. So there's a really important military figure that is in charge of the experiments that are being done from the military side. Then there's a doctor that is really aligned with like the government of Neo-Tokyo that is overseeing the experiments as well. And they talk about the fact that Tetsuo's patterns are very, very, very similar to the patterns that they saw, right? Like the neural patterns. So they're observing him endlessly when they're doing these experiments on him that they saw with Akira. How does that not make you stop? They both lived through this. The colonel was old, right? And then the doctor was like, the colonel I would say was like in his 60s. Who knows? I was 16 watching this. Maybe he was like younger than that. But the doctor I would say was a little bit younger. But it doesn't even slow them down, right? So the lesson is never learned, right? And that's just universal, I think, problem with humanity's hubris, as I said. So I want to go back to Tetsuo though, right? So all these experiments are happening. He wants to know who Akira is, what was Akira, like he's hearing whispers and he's hearing things in his mind and he's getting images and doesn't understand them and wants to know more about why these experiments are happening to him. But let's go back to Tetsuo before all of these experiments were happening, right? When he was just a bike gang member, part of Kaneda's gang. He's always lived in the shadow of Kaneda. If you have an older sibling, you probably know the feeling. They had a very similar, like I said, dynamic of best friends, but also like an older brother, younger brother dynamic, where Kaneda was the cool, confident, cocky one. Tetsuo was the one that was just quiet and not really cool. And he always wanted to be like Kaneda. He endlessly idolized him, but also wanted to come out from behind his shadow. So Kaneda also saved him in the orphanage that they both grew up in Neo-Tokyo. So it's a really like complex dynamic because Tetsuo feels that he's indebted to him, but almost feels like resentful of him at the same time. And like I said, Kaneda, for his part, again, if you think of like older sibling, younger sibling, he does like bully Tetsuo and tease him, but it's more like a brotherly dynamic. I'm not saying it's like malicious or anything like that, but he's never been able to step out from behind Kaneda's shadow. But now that he has all this psychic power, right, that he's able to like tap into, harness, leverage because of the experiments that the military and government are doing on him, he can now do this. So it's a little bit more involved than that. Basically, long story short, the government and military were giving him drugs, as I said, while they were experimenting on him. Then they stopped giving him the drugs, and Tetsuo basically got them illegally on the streets, right? So yeah, psychedelics, sorry, I couldn't think of the name. I couldn't think what it was called. Psychedelic street drugs. And those like exponentially increased his psychic powers. It was way, way more than whatever powers he had when the government and the military were giving him very specific like psychoactive compounds. He just hit the streets, right? So obviously because they were illegal street drugs, I would assume that the quantity was way more than whatever the government and military was giving him. It was not controlled substances. So at this point, he actually surpasses Tetsuo, the limits of human consciousness. That is how powerful he becomes. Now it's not just psychic abilities, right? Where like maybe you can read someone's mind or you can like move an object that's across the room. It goes into like psionic abilities, so psionic, and it even goes past that where it's like, okay, he has now surpassed like the limits, the absolute limits of human consciousness, where he is like a god and he has achieved godhood. And you know, you start to question as a viewer, okay, is that what happened to Akira? Maybe when Akira, you know, caused the explosion that destroyed Tokyo, was he not killed? Did he become a god, and did he shift out of our current plane of existence and our current physical realm, and did he create another world that he's the god of, right? So body horror, that is why I called this, what did I call it? Akira body horror. I don't remember the other thing I called it, godhood, right? But body horror, right? So it's just what it sounds like, right? It's the Demi Moore movie, or Helter Skelter, which is a Japanese film. You guys can look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about. Takashi Miike has a movie that's body horror, but it's exactly what it sounds like. So at the end of Akira, right? Very end of the movie. So I just said it. Tetsuo is completely out of control now. So yes, while he has surpassed any kind of human limits, he can't control his powers. So Tetsuo figures out that Akira is at Neo-Tokyo Olympic Stadium. So he goes there at the end of the movie because, like I said, the whole film he's been trying to figure out, okay, who or what is Akira? Like, what am I not being told? All of these experiments that are being done on me by the military, by the government, like who the heck was Akira? So he gets to the stadium and he finds out that actually Akira is buried under the stadium in like these different capsules. So it's like tissue from Akira's body and like parts of his brainstem. So again, you want to talk about humans never learning their lesson, right? So even after everything that happened with Akira, how many people in Tokyo were killed when this explosion happened, right? They kept the remnants of Akira that they could, and the military and the government in Neo-Tokyo, Japan, I'll just say, and hid it under the stadium just in case they ever developed the technology to somehow revive him and bring him back. So far from learning their lesson, they were like, oh, we're just going to put this on hold, even with Akira. So Tetsuo finds that, and basically what happens is Kaneda shows up, right? He shows up on his red bike, he has a gun, and he's like, okay, because I love you, right? Because you're my brother, because you're my lifelong friend, you're my best friend. We grew up in the orphanage together in Neo-Tokyo. You are now at the point where you cannot control these psychic powers. I have to take you out, right? They're well aware, everybody that lives in Neo-Tokyo, maybe you didn't live through it, right? These guys aren't 31, so they weren't alive when Akira caused the explosion, but it's not like people aren't aware of it. So there's this ultimate showdown that happens, right? And this is the body horror part, where if you've never seen this, go on YouTube, like the second you get out of the live, literally just put in end of Akira Tetsuo. End of Akira Tetsuo. His arm, the body horror, his organs start to spill out. He turns into a grotesque, deformed baby. His intestines start to spill out. His body grows so large, he fills up the entire stadium, if you can get an image. So he's screaming for help, though, because he can't control what's happening to him. It's agonizing. It's hurting him. He's screaming. He's yelling. And Kaneda is trying to kill him, right? So what actually ends up happening? The ESPers that I mentioned towards the beginning, they are really small in stature and like the size of children, but their skin is really wrinkled and they look to be old. They have gray hair. They are being experimented on by the government and the military. So I mentioned Takashi, right? Okay, they show up while all of this is happening to Tetsuo, and Kaneda keeps trying to like shoot him with the gun and keeps trying to kill him. It's not working. They show up basically, and hard to explain what happens. So like Tetsuo is this like writhing mass of like oversized flesh that is like taking up the entire stadium and is grotesque and deformed. And as I said, his intestines are like spilling out of him and he's completely unrecognizable at this point. And he's screaming and yelling for Kaneda to help him and he can't stop what's happening to him. The ESPers show up. There is this like hot white light of like an explosion. So it's like a flash. And like in an instant, like Tokyo is obliterated. AKA slash the world. So you can take the ending different ways, right? But I took it as, okay, why'd they show up? They showed up because the ESPers, they have psychic powers or the government wouldn't be wasting their time experimenting on them. They saved Tetsuo from like further deformities basically, by destroying him. They didn't know how else to do it. As I said, Kaneda had been trying to kill him. He wasn't able to. And at that moment, everything is just obliterated. Like, just look at the end of Akira, right? You should watch it though. It's one of those anime, like you have to watch it. But this white hot flash of explosion. Okay, the doctor I mentioned before. So I said there was a colonel that was overseeing the experiments on the military side. And then there was a doctor as well that was overseeing the experiments. He says while all of this is happening in the anime, there's like a voiceover. Best as I can remember, I haven't seen this in a long time, that Akira's energy, this is the quote though, Akira's energy enveloped Tetsuo and that it's like the birth of the universe. And you see a white hot flash and then this total explosion. So what does that make you realize? This was a black flash, and this was starts moving. So this was when Akira destroyed Tokyo when he lost control in 1988. So 31 years later, obviously the ESPers are saving Tetsuo from himself, but it's not a white hot flash that also destroys Tokyo. But here's another parallel, but it's not the exact same. It's not a one-to-one analogy. So with Akira's explosion and destruction of Tokyo, as I said, it triggered World War III in 1988. This time, it doesn't look like anything is left. So how do I know the world was obliterated, right? Because if the stadium was just exploded and you just see like Tokyo get destroyed, why does that even mean that the rest of Japan was destroyed? Because we're going to get to it. The very, very end of the movie, right? The final scene. What happens is Kaneda is shown, okay, after this white hot flash explosion, the stadium, everything, boom, right? It's this white hot flash. Kaneda is shown holding a new planet in the palm of his hand. Okay? Then a supernova appears. I don't know if you guys, can you see this? Shit, it's hard to see with the light ring. There, right? You see that, right? Supernova appears. It says, I am Tetsuo, right? Subtitles. Okay. So, Kaneda has the planet in his hand. Okay? Then a supernova covers the entire screen. Okay? Then you hear a voiceover of Tetsuo, totally calm, though. You have not ever heard Tetsuo calm in this entire movie, and confident. And he says, I am Tetsuo, right? Like, I remember this from when I was like 14 watching this on Sci-Fi Channel, because Sci-Fi Channel used to show anime Saturday morning. So the lineup was called Saturday Morning Anime, but they were movies. It wasn't like TV series like Cartoon Network later on. So it was like 1995 when I was watching this. Okay, so what does that mean? What does it mean that there's a white-hot explosion that destroys Tokyo? You can go, okay, the ESPers had psychic powers too, so they were just destroying Tetsuo to save him from himself so he wouldn't become further deformed. Okay, but that wasn't the end of the movie. Like I said, the end of the movie is after that explosion, Kaneda is shown holding a planet in the palm of his hand. Then you see the supernova that I just showed you guys on the screen. Then you hear the voiceover of Tetsuo saying, I am Tetsuo. Then that's the end of Akira. There are no more scenes. So I haven't read the manga. We're not talking about the manga. That's a totally different thing. I've said that already. It wasn't based on it. So the way I interpreted it was basically at the end of the day, Tetsuo, as I said, maybe about, I don't know how much time has gone by in this live, but remember when I said that at a certain point of the experimentations that are being done, he surpassed the human limits of human consciousness. It wasn't just psychic powers, right? Obviously, the government picked him up for a reason. Like I said, he interacted with Takashi when he was out with the biker gang. They saw something in that interaction and they kidnapped him, experimented on him. But he got to the point with his psychic powers, his psionic powers, where he surpassed all human limitations and became a god. So I believe that ending, what did that mean? I believe that ending means that Tetsuo literally became a god, he achieved godhood, and that he created a new world, and he was the god of that world. And I think that Kaneda was living in it. That's what I think was represented by the world being in the palm of Kaneda's hand. Supernova, what did that mean? What does it mean that Akira's explosion was black at the beginning of the movie in 1988? The white hot explosion at the end of the movie caused by the ESPers that saved Tetsuo was white. And, you know, what does a supernova mean? I mean, it's like, that's all connected to the Big Bang. I mean, again, if you go back to what the doctor mentions, that's all towards the end. He says that Akira's energy enveloping Tetsuo is that like the birth of the universe. Black explosion, white explosion, destruction, creation, supernova, birth of the universe. That's my interpretation. So obviously it's not like you can have different interpretations, but I'd be curious like how somebody would tie all of that together, because it's like, while you can have different interpretations, you can't just have any interpretation you want, right? And you have to stay within the anime. There's no point in going to the manga when, again, like when this was done, he hadn't even finished the manga. This anime was done in 1988. Katsuhiro Otomo did not finish the manga until 1991. So they're totally different. Some of the main characters are side characters in the anime, from the manga to the anime. Some characters are not even in here. So yeah, that is my discussion on Akira. It is one of those anime that you have to see. So Perfect Blue and Akira, you absolutely have to see. Ghost in the Shell was actually the manga that I reviewed. I think the manga is better. I saw Standalone Complex. I didn't like it that much. I never saw the movie. I wasn't really interested in seeing the movie. But Perfect Blue and Akira, you have to see. So, okay, I will be back. I have a lot more anime that I am going to be reviewing. So follow me if you want to see the other lives. If you want to see what I said about Perfect Blue and Ghost in the Shell, you can check my TikTok because I have some shorts on there. And I will see you guys the next time I go live. Bye.